Hello, and welcome to my show. Could you be more specific? I'm your host, Jonathan Steele, coming to you through the Stay Woke podcast. And on this episode, I want to touch on the NBA Finals that's upcoming and how that all relates to what's going on ABC in regards to Roseanne. So I'm going to start first with the NBA Finals with how we call and how we define sustained excellence. Now, when you look at the finals matchup that's being presented, you have the Golden State Warriors and Cleveland Cavaliers. They're meeting for the fourth straight year. That shows you how great that both their organizations overall have been able to achieve success, but not all success is the same. So I'll start with Golden State. To be fair to them, they originally started with drafting Steph, Clay, and Draymond. There was really no way to know what kind of players they're going to be. You knew they were going to be good. You just didn't know that they were going to be this good, especially in this style of NBA with the new rule changes. And then because of the cap and Steph Curry having issues with his ankles, they're able to sign him at a good deal. And then he was able to have them in a position from a cap number that they could sign another max player, and that was essentially Kevin Durant replacing Harrison Barnes. They would have had to spend the same amount of money. They just replaced Harrison Barnes with Kevin Durant. And the false kind of equivalency now is because Kevin Durant went there, and you look at the history of them being a 73-win team the year before. He nearly beat them in that same year. But in the end, like a lot of things, results is what people look at. And so he wins a championship, and then, people get hyped and caught up on, is he better than LeBron? And on the other end of that, you have someone like LeBron who his sustained excellence comes from the fact that he's taken two franchises to the NBA Finals 4 consecutive years. That's an amazing achievement. And a lot of that is defined by, he's only had, I think, 2 situations where he's came into the finals where he's been looked as a favorite. The other times he's been going up against teams that are dramatically better than him. And to me, when you look at that, that lets you know that excellence is kind of defined by those 2 different formats of, like, you have an organization, which is the Golden State Warriors, and then you have a sole entity in LeBron James. And I know a lot of people say, like, oh, well, if his team loses, he doesn't get the blame. And if he wins, he gets the lion's share of the credit. In his case, that is very accurate, because when you account for 60 to 70% of how well the people around you do, then you're not a negative. You're a plus. For anybody that works the job now, you can kind of tell what your worth is if you're not there that day. How well do they perform? How well does your job function? And if it doesn't function well, then that kind of increases the value that you have to that particular organization. In light of that, I say that because it's pretty much, a foregone conclusion. His team's probably going to end up losing, whether it's in 5 games, 6 games, and whether it's 7, short of, great coaching move changes in terms of like roster moves and lineups working. The likelihood of them beating the Warriors 4 out of 7 is probably not going to happen. The Rockets kind of gave you a blueprint in a way in terms of having all athletic guys that can switch on the floor, but that's not necessary. I mean, the Cavs got that, but I can't really say for sure that they're going to be able to do that all the way. I'm saying that to say this. After this series, in the next 2 weeks, it's going to go back to, bashing LeBron, saying, well, he's 3-6, Jordan's never lost, and you hear that over and over again. But getting to the party and being the party are 2 different things. It's the same thing with Tom Brady and Joe Montana. If Joe Montana was 4 for 4, then that means in other years he just outright lost. And he didn't have his organization in a position to win. If you look at, say, someone like Michael Jordan, everyone says, oh, he went 6 for 6, and if he didn't retire, he would have went 8 for 8, even though when he came back toward the tail end of that second year, they lost against the Orlando Magic, but no one brings that up because then that doesn't fit their narrative. Tom Brady's been to 8 Super Bowls. So if you're on a team, he's had your organization in a position to win the whole thing pretty much half his career. the majority of LeBron James' career now, he's put his organization in a position to be a champion. That's an incredible achievement. To just bring up like, hey, well, you're better off if you're undefeated. It's like, no, not in a team sport. It's better off if you're undefeated if you're in an individual sport like boxing. Boxing is a sport that you can say that. People don't even bring that up with the MMA, but, boxing is fair. So those are just some of my thoughts in regards to that, because I've been thinking about, this upcoming series and just and how we kind of judge people and how we kind of put people in the same categories, even though they may or may not fit. And Kevin Durant's an incredible basketball player, and he's had a great overall career since playing. But the gap between him and LeBron is not even close. Like, they're not even comparable. If you had put LeBron on a team that was comparable to the Golden State, they would beat that team because he's just that far and away a much better player. And I say that in the sense of also then transition from that, which is a big thing with ABC, to in light of what they're recently going through with their network with Roseanne. Now, apparently, I don't really follow Roseanne like that. I have noticed that over the past several years, she's been a part of the birther movement. And she's also made comments before. I know she did a parody of a Hitler kind of cover. And I know she's now blaming Ambien for her recent statements. And I guess to quote Herman Edwards, when he used to always say, before you tweet something or before you send something, he always used to say, don't press send. Look at what you're going to say and really think about it. To put what she put together, it sounded like someone that was of a right state of mind to say what she said. And of course, you're going to have some people that, defend her or say like, hey, well, it was in the moment. Let's not do this. And, are we jumping the gun or whatnot? But everything now is public relations motivated. Sponsors run networks. Sponsors run a lot of the entertainment channels that you see and a lot of the films you see. It's like, that's why when you go to the movies, you see a ton of commercials before you even watch the movie, before you even get to trailers. And I know people have brought up the president of ABC and her being a black woman and making this decision. But a lot of people don't bring up Bob Iger, who runs Disney. Disney owns ABC. Chances are high she didn't just make that on a whim. Now, I'm pretty sure she is able to own and operate ABC as a whole in terms of it being its own entity. But, she still has to answer to someone. And more than likely, when the advertisers probably called Bob Iger of Disney and said that they were pulling money out of their show, Bob Iger then calls her. It didn't just happen out of nowhere in terms of her deciding to do that. But it is something to think about, especially when you're trying to connect with fans. I know everyone says all social media is a great way to promote your show, and it is. But, a lot of times that a lot of celebrities don't even really run those accounts. They usually have people do that for them. I know the president, the ABC president, her name is Channing Dungey. I believe I'm saying her name right. And I do remember her being put in charge to run ABC a few years ago, I believe, is when she took over. But I know people have been bringing up, well, it's unfair because, the show Roseanne makes the network a lot of money. But, it's very similar to the Glenn Beck situation. Once advertisers say they're pulling out of your show, it doesn't even matter if people still watch it. If you're not turning a profit and you're essentially paying for it. In the sense, if they were to continue to pay the salaries that they're paying to the cast, but they're not getting no advertising money, they're not turning over a profit on the show. That's what did in Glenn Beck on Fox all those years ago when people started going after the advertisers. And that's something that people always got to remember. Once advertisers start pulling out of anything, that's when change happens. And it's the same thing with the NFL. And I know Jim Carrey, made a painting discussing that, and he showed all the people who sponsor the NFL in terms of making your voice heard to them about no longer wanting to sponsor or patronize the NFL in that way. If they start to lose major sponsorships over this anthem protest, things will change. Because money is what makes people change their behavior and their tune on a lot of things. And in regards to Roseanne, She ended up getting pulled from, I think, multiple other networks, whether it was reruns of her show in general. But I have always heard that she's always kind of had a problematic relationship, especially in terms of like a lot of staff turnover on her shows. I was surprised to begin with that Wanda Sykes was working on this show, especially if you look at some of the history that Roseanne Barr's had in terms of some of her tweets and questioning the citizenship of the President Obama at the time. And she's been making some pretty crude jokes, and she's been on this edge for a long time now. So it's not exactly a shocking thing that she's involved in this. It's actually surprising that then ABC would decide to then move forward with her show, but they did it overall because, it was, a chance for a lucrative outcome, which it did for a short while. Unfortunately, now they got to do cast payouts because you went ahead and renegotiated paying the cast additional money because you were thinking like, hey, we're bringing the show back the second season. And I think they stood to make like $60 million off the show, but they got to eat, the salaries that they were going to pay the actors because of this situation. So that's something to really think about moving forward, especially in regards to how you put clauses. I know there's a lot of morality clauses on shows, but that's something that you got to look at moving forward with that. But I say that to say, like, trying to be successful for a prolonged period of time is not the easiest thing to do. Clearly, that's very difficult, and you have a lot of things that could be working against you as to why things don't go your way with that. But those are just some of my thoughts with that. I thought that there are an interesting case study, especially ABC for this week, because they had the NBA Finals happening tomorrow, and then to also be having what happened with Roseanne happening in the span of just a few days from each other. I know for a network, it's not the best PR that they're dealing with, but again, they've been around for decades now, so I'm pretty sure they'll probably end up getting a handle on it. Their biggest cash generator is what Shonda Rhimes has been to them, and she's another example of sustained excellence. I don't watch Grey's Anatomy anymore, but for you to be able to be in that many years of a season and to put together the kind of resume she's put together, it really is a tremendous achievement by her. So those are just some of my thoughts that I had on that. I'm really looking forward to doing some more pick up on this topic, especially with the Roseanne situation, because I think how it's going to affect future shows moving forward. I want to thank everyone that's been listening to this podcast. I want to thank Dee for helping to put this show out there. I'm looking forward to our audience continue to grow more and more. I'll be back every Tuesday and Thursday for future episodes of Could You Be More Specific? I am Jonathan Steele. I thank you for your time, and I hope you guys have a good one.